Hi, I'm Tom Power. Welcome to Toy Heart, a podcast about bluegrass. This is the last episode of Season 2. Here from Nashville is my conversation with Alison Krauss.
I remember, the first time I looked out in the audience and saw people singing words to our songs that only we had recorded. That was just a really crazy moment. Just never thought it'd end up being there. Never thought we'd hear back from Rounder. Yeah. Never thought we would hear from Rounder in the first place.
If this is your first time listening, you can hear full interviews with Jerry Douglas, Alison Brown, Bela Fleck, Larry Sparks, Jody Stecker, and so many more wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Later on.
Acoustic America, iconic guitars, mandolins, and banjos. The newest special exhibition at the Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix, Arizona, presents a once-in-a-lifetime collection of 90 historic stringed instruments played by the heroes of folk, blues, and bluegrass music, including Earl Scruggs, John Hartford, Alison Brown, David Grisman, and more. Details at mim.org. Oh, hi, and welcome to Basic Folk, where we have honest conversations with folk musicians on the Bluegrass Situation Podcast Network. It's me, Cindy Howes. I host this podcast. Today, we are talking to the legendary Billy Bragg. We got to talk to Billy on board the Cayamo cruise at sea, Lizzie No and myself. It was a big day for everybody. Lizzie No and Billy Bragg got to meet. They are like-minded individuals, and it was really cool, actually, to see their friendship flourishing on board the cruise. And hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers for like a Billy Bragg, Lizzie No, not only a friendship, but maybe a future collaboration together. Before we get into the details of our Billy Bragg interview, please have you signed up for our newsletter. It comes into your inbox once a month. You can sign up at the link in the show notes. It'll keep you updated on what's happening on the podcast in terms of like our thoughts and feelings, as well as recent previous guests and future guests. Sign up for it at the link in the show notes or at basicfolk.com. We're also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Basic Folk Pod. You can also find us on YouTube and follow us there. You can become a contributor to Basic Folk. We rely on listener contributions of $5 or $10 a month or one-time gifts of $50 or $100. We do not make money on this podcast. In fact, thanks to the people who do contribute to Basic Folk, I don't go broke trying to keep this operation going. So if you have any extra cash and enjoy the podcast, it would be so great if you could head over to our website, basicfolk.com, make a donation, buy yourself a Basic Folk beanie. There's also a link in the show notes. And thanks. Okay. Billy Bragg joins Lizzie and me on board Cayamo to talk about songwriting, social justice, punk rock, and, of course, the little guy, which is Billy Bragg's nickname for Woody Guthrie. In our interview, we talk about using humor as a way to connect to his audience so that he can bring up his political activism, like fighting for transgender rights, the importance of unions, and abortion rights. It's interesting to hear how he wants the Americana audience to remain as relevant as he does. Billy talked about his place as a British artist in the genealogy of folk music and how working on Mermaid Avenue with Wilco allowed him to be a part of the folk tradition. He also shared how he overcame anxiety as a teenage musician. Standing in front of a crowd playing with his friends in a band really boosted his confidence. Meanwhile, the old-school stiff upper lip of British culture created an emotional barrier between Billy's and his parents' generation. The older generation grew up with the cultural heritage of separating oneself from any emotion. When he was a teen, Billy Bragg's father was dying, and the doctor recommended not telling the patient or talking about it at all. Several decades later, his mother insisted that everyone talk to and about her terminal cancer diagnosis. Bragg also gets into the merits of socialism, why nostalgia rubs him the wrong way, and his favorite English treat. Spoiler alert, it's marmite. I'd like to try it, although it does seem pretty gross. Okay, let's get into our conversation. First, we'll check out a clip of an older Billy Bragg song that he has been recently bringing back out at shows. There's Power in a Union, and then we'll get to our conversation with Billy Bragg on Basic Folk.
We must pay for in the cities and the farmlands, the trenches full of mud. War has always been the boss's way, sir.
All right, Billy Bragg, you ready to do this?
I am indeed.
Okay. Lizzie texted me this morning and said they were listening to your song Sexuality, and she said the verses were, quote, silly as hell.
Yeah.
And last night at your show, you made important proclamations about supporting trans people and supporting abortion, but you were also like very cheeky, very silly. What is your relationship to being like a wacky, silly person? Like, where did it come from, and who were the silly people in your life, and how has it been useful as you've gotten older and had this like huge platform?
My dad was pretty silly. He was a kind of funny guy. And I've always found it really helps me when I stand on stage to connect with audiences. I began playing in pubs, opening for all sorts of different bands, and the audience didn't know me. And I found that by talking to them, engaging with them, I could get them to listen to my songs. Mm-hmm. But also, as you mentioned, I do touch on some thorny issues. And I think if you can get the audience laughing before that, soften them up a little bit, it's much easier to bring that. As long as you don't come in, heavy-handed with a sledgehammer. If you bring them in a way that you meet them halfway with it, mm-hmm. I find it's much more conducive to making that important connection. But also the folk tradition is, which I'm also part of, as well as the Americana here, and I have to say the punk rock as well, there's always a lot of talking in that. Woody Guthrie first came to New York in 1940 to play a gig with a load of other artists of the kind of what we would now call Americana, blues artists, jazz artists and stuff like that. They gave him 30 minutes. He played 2 songs. The rest of the time he was talking to his audience, just connecting with them. Sometimes it's context, sometimes it's joking around, sometimes I'm trying to challenge my audience. If you're going to make music that is political, you don't want to just be preaching to the choir. You want to be challenging the audience, and mm-hmm. The issue of trans rights is quite challenging for my audience because most of them are in their 60s, and it's not something they've really thought about before, and perhaps they've never met a trans person. So when I introduce it, I have to bring them in a way that doesn't judge them or where they've been, and just put the issues before them and remind them that they were radical once. If they're into me, chances are they were radical in the 80s when I first came through on college radio in the US. And, they might not be able to get around as quick as they used to, but there's no reason why they shouldn't be as engaged as they were back then. So you want to do that in a way that you're putting your arm around them rather than a way you're getting in their face and pointing the finger at them.
Also, during your set, you're using euphemisms, but talking quite a bit about sex. What purpose does talking about sex in your set serve for you and also for your audience?
Well, I think it sort of, again, when we're talking around issues, when you have people who are maybe not running for office but trying to make policy, and they're saying things, they don't only want to ban abortion, they want also to ban contraception. I mean, you've actually heard someone say on serious person say on YouTube they want to ban recreational sex. I mean, it just, you're into that area where you have to talk about these kind of things. And I've always found, again, that's something that whether I'm using euphemisms or trying to get hard on the issue, if you can leaven it with a bit of humour, as what I try to do, it does show the the ridiculousness of it, although the judge in Alabama who banned IVF has already shown us how ridiculous it's going to be if those people get their way. But there is also a humorous side to it as well, you know, and I try to keep that balance between, you know, clocking them in the side of the head with something serious and sort of bringing them in with something a little bit more humorous.
So to go back a long ways, 50 years ago you learned to play guitar with Philip Wigg.
Yeah, Wiggy.
Wiggy.
Bless him.
Who's your next door neighbor as a teen, and he has been a huge formative presence in your life. So what has it been like to like grow up and move through life with a friend like Wiggy?
Oh, he's great, Wiggy. He's really great. I saw him just recently. He still lives, not exactly where we live, but still lives quite close by. And yeah, he's just someone who reminds me how it all started, keeps me grounded, you know. The first American tour I was ever offered was open with Echo and the Bunnymen in 1984. And the guy who was supposed to be roading for me couldn't come because he got a radio job. So I rang Wiggy and said, come on, man, you've got to do this with me. We dreamed about doing this. And it's going to, you know, if I end up just sending you postcards of all these places that we talked about, it won't be the same. You've got to come. So he took a month off work and we ended up walking down to the Pacific Ocean in Santa Monica and paddling in the Pacific Ocean. And,
wow.
And yeah, it was a real great moment because it was what we talked about. And if I'd never come to America again, that would have been enough. Mm-hmm. That would have been it. We'd have done it. You know, the things I set out to do was make an album, be on the front cover of the New Musical Express, and tour America. And Tour in America was the last one. That was in August 1984. That was it.
Dayanu, that's it.
Yeah, I've done those things, and I was happy, and you know, the fact that Wiggy had been part of it just made it so special for the two of us to do it together.
I want to stay in this early period. You've said that you were an anxious teenager after being bullied, and that the anxiety kept you out of live music spaces and other social settings.
It did, yeah.
Obviously, that's now what you do all the time for work. So how did you learn to live with the anxiety and or get through it, over it, under it?
Well, I got through it by I had a little gang of which Wiggy was a part. We were a band. We played together in the back rooms. Music was our therapy. You know, we couldn't chase girls. We weren't in the football team. We didn't have cars. We had each other and the Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan and latterly The Clash. And then we were playing in a band and getting up on stage and playing and being front and center. I was writing the songs. That was a real boost for my confidence. And then when that band fell apart and I didn't really know what I was going to do, going out on stage on my own was probably the ultimate test of whether I was still an anxious person in crowds. And I proved to myself that I wasn't. And so that I think, you know, doing that was a huge help to me in overcoming that anxiety.
Just diving right in.
Fake it till you make it.
It was the last chance I had, to be honest with you. It was, you know, you know, this is it. Are you going to do this job or not? I thought I'd actually given up doing it, and I joined the army for a short period. I was trying to be a tank driver.
And how did that go?
Well, when you've driven one tank, you've driven them all,
Sure.
really. It's a bit unfortunate.
That's what I always say.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear you say it before I just threw out that old cliche.
It is a cliche, but it's true. They're all green as well. It's really boring. And they stink of diesel. But when I got there, you know, having sort of signed up because my band had broken up and I'd back living at my mum's house, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And when I needed to press the eject button on my life, our army in the UK is a volunteer army. So I signed up for 9 years. But during basic training, I realised that this wasn't going to stop me writing songs. If anything, it inspired me to write more. It gave, you know, I got that. So I thought, oh, damn it, I'm going to have to get out the army now and have a go, one last go. And that, I think the experience of the army, basic training, that was also good for my confidence, because when I was confronted by a difficult crowd, I thought, you know, well, I've done the British Army, I've done basic training, I'm not going to let these drunks put me off, you know. So it did. I won't recommend it to anyone, but it was kind of a sabbatical experience for me.
You're known as a political songwriter and activist.
That's what I've heard.
Yes. But your songs are also like very in tune with your emotions. And I wonder if that began with a song you performed this last night, Tank Park Salute, which is about the death of your dad in 1967 when you were 18. And it was, I think, the first time you addressed something so hard and so personal. So how do you think that song changed your writing, and how do you relate to including hard emotions and feelings into songs today?
1976. That's when I was 18. 1976, my dad passed away. Actually, Tank Park Salute came quite late, really. I guess I was edging that way with some... I mean, I'm of the belief that the currency of music is empathy. You're trying to get people to feel something for the person that you're writing the song about, the character in the song, the emotion you're expressing in the song, the feeling you're expressing in the song. And I've always tried to do that. You know, very early on I have a song, The Milkman of Human Kindness, which is really about, that's actually about empathy. So that's always kind of been there. But writing Tank Park Salute was quite a watershed for me, because when my father was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer in 1975, in the summer of 75, and the hospital, the doctor there told us the best way to deal with it would be not to talk about it to him, which I know my mum regretted terribly. I thought it was strange at the time, but particularly my mum, you know, it took him about 18 months to die, and we never really said the things we wanted to say. And consequently, as a way of dealing with it, I never talked to anybody else about it. It wasn't something I ever broached. You know, obviously my guys in my band, Wiggy, those guys knew what had happened. We never talked about it. I never even spoke to my brother about it. I was there on the day my brother was at school. And then one day I was writing a song about something else. And a line came up. I closed my eyes, and when I looked, your name was in the memorial book, which is where my father's ashes are interred. There's a book they have every year that's open on the day he died, and there's the names of the people who died that day, and there's a little memorial verse, and we always go with my mum, or we did before she passed. And that line came up, and I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. If I go down this path now, I'm going to have to confront these issues. I wrote the song there and looked at it, and I thought, well, that's a great song. I mean, it came out like wham. I don't know how that happens sometimes, but they just come out in one go. And I thought, if I sing this song, I'm going to have to talk to absolute strangers about what happened, like you two. Sit here and talk about it. And it was good for me to do that. It was really good for me to do that. So when people come to me and say, you know, your song helped me to deal with the loss of my, you know, parent, sibling, partner, whatever, friend, helped me come to terms with it, I can say, yeah, it had the same effect on me too. It helped me to come to terms with the death of my father in a way that I hadn't done before. And I think that's one of the powers that music has. It has that ability to help you to connect with feelings that you can't put into words sometimes. And Tank Park Salute did that for me.
I was wondering, listening to you talk about how the doctor said don't tell your dad that he's dying, and not talk about it, not saying the things that you maybe wanted to say, had to do with British fortitude.
Yep. My dad's generation, particularly when my dad was born in the 1920s, he went through the Second World War. That's when he was a tank driver. And that was the stiff upper lip. But to be honest, it's bullshit. You know, in the end, even if we just had that conversation, you know, where we said how much we loved each other, I think it would have helped a lot. Certainly would have helped my mum more, I think. And so when she, in 2011, when she was diagnosed with terminal cancer, I drove up. Her sister was at the hospital, took her to the hospital. I live about 140 miles away. I drove up there and she was there. And the first thing she said to me was, we have to talk about this. I'm like, hey, 100%, Mum, you know.
Learned your
lesson. She said, you got to tell me what they're telling you. I said, yeah. And you got to tell me when you're in pain, okay? Don't be suffering in silence, and I'll tell you what the doctors are telling me, okay, 100%. And that's the way we did it. And over a period of about 6 weeks, she passed away, but she passed away fully herself and fully in control of the situation. And I'm really proud of that, because she, you know, what happened with Dad was wrong, really. They shouldn't do that kind of thing. But it was very, very much of that generation. Because he could have said something. Yeah. He could have said, you know, I think I'm dying, but he didn't. I have that to reflect on as well. And maybe he preferred that. I don't know. But, you know, that's how in those days, that's how people dealt with it. You know, those people who'd been through the war, they saw death up close. You know, both my mum and my father grew up in London during the Blitz. So they witnessed people, you know, one day you see them, the next day you don't. They went through that. So how you deal with that, can be quite a difficult thing to, particularly when it keeps happening, you know. And that's how they dealt with things.
I want to talk about unions. You have talked about how you've brought back There's Power in a Union. Now, because of all of this renewed activism and energy around unions, like We're seeing Starbucks workers unionizing. We're seeing Amazon workers unionizing, like at the heart of the empire. What did the miners' strike of 84 and 85 and your writing and performing around that movement teach you about how artists can be of use to the labor movement?
It more or less defined me, the miners' strike in 1984. I mean, I was knocking around. My first album had come out, and there's politics on there, but they're very personal politics. But thanks to the inspiration of one person whose name I'll never forget, it was Margaret Thatcher. She kind of...
Who?
Indeed.
I don't know her.
She declared war on my class, and I grew up in a town where there's a big car factory. Ford's employed 40,000 people when I left school. They now employ 4,000. It's a real loss. But that was a strong union town, and because of that, it had a lot of good facilities, had good schools, good hospitals. The unions played a big part in all that. And I think I learned a couple of things. The first thing is that music has a role to play in struggle, not the role of providing answers, not the role of changing the world. I don't believe music can do that. I've tried my damnedest for 40 years, and my realization is that's not the power. The power of music lies elsewhere, and we can touch on that later if you like. But the thing I learned most is that when you travel around the world as I do, political parties change all the time, but working people organising, it comes down to the same basic fundamentals: safety in the workplace, decent money, build up the community, and those kind of issues. So I've always found it much more productive to work with unions abroad rather than connect with particular political parties. And so that aspect of the strike was really, really educational, because I didn't really have a background in politics. I didn't go to university. I didn't study politics. In fact, I think I'm right in saying that most of my politics as a youth I got from listening to American soul music, because I picked up through osmosis the politics of the civil rights movement. You buy Motown Chartbusters Volume 5, it has Abraham, Martin and John on it by Marvin Gaye, and War by Edwin Starr, and Ball of Confusion by The Temptations. Something was going on there. It wasn't just the Smokey Robinson songs that I really loved. There was something really serious going on there. And so I then listened to a lot of 60s singer-songwriters, in the Bob Dylan mold, and that idea from the 1960s that music could change the world. That was still around in the early 80s. And with the miners' strike, I suddenly found myself in a position to find out if that was actually true. And I tried as hard as I could during the strike, to do what I could and support where I could. And when the strike ended, I played a founding role in a group called Red Wedge, who did something that had never been done in British politics before, which is a pop movement supporting a particular party, the Labour Party. And Thatcher still won in 87, but that, I felt I'd pushed as hard as I could and done everything possible I could imagine, in solidarity with, colleagues who'd also, the people in Red Wedge, we all met doing gigs for the miners. That's how we met each other, being on the same platform. But ultimately, I did my best to try and see how far it would go. And that was a real, that aspect of engagement, inspires me still. I'm so glad I did that.
I think that's an interesting lesson for the left right now, because sometimes I think in this age we underestimate the power of physically being together in solidarity as culture workers. Like we think we know each other over Twitter, but to actually be in space together at a particular time and place is crucial. And also because Americans are obsessed with our electoral politics, and I think we sometimes lose sight of how important it can be to plug into union organizing, community organizing, tenant organizing.
Solidarity, really. And there is a solidarity in song. When you may be living or working or going to school in an environment where you don't feel your views are reflected or respected. You come along to a gig and there's someone on stage singing about a particular issue. Let's say it's Billy Bragg, and you're singing Power in the Union, and you're in a hall with 500 people, and they put their fists in the air and they sing, and you think, wow, you put your fist in the air. You go home, you go back to your environment, but you know that there's a room full of people in your town who do care about this stuff because you've experienced that. Now that doesn't actually come from me. I'm off, given the moment. I'm creating the moment. but that solidarity comes from the audience. And I felt last night in the show,
Yes.
there was elements of that, around issues, such as trans rights, that some people on this cruise may not have thought about. I think actually quite a few had, because they've been talking to me about it today. People who have trans children or trans grandchildren have been talking to me about it today. They may have been, that might be the first time they've had, seen an expression of solidarity with the trans community, and they might have looked around and thought, hey, well, maybe I should get on board with this. People who were active in the 80s with, gay rights and lesbian rights might think to themselves, oh, okay, this is something I really should be up to speed on this. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to gently nudge them to do that. But the solidarity that inspires that don't come from me. It comes from there. And that's the way it's always been. I think the world changes from what the audience decides to do rather than what the artist tries to do. The artist has a role to play, important role to play, bringing people together, raising funds, recharging activism. But ultimately, it's what the audience do, what they take away, and how they use that changes. And I speak from experience. The first out gay men I ever saw, I'm sure I met some gay men, but they weren't out. But I was 19 years old at Rock Against Racism. Rock Against Racism. And Tom Robinson, who was top of the bill, had a song called Sing If You're Glad to Be Gay. And when he sang that song, all these guys around us, me with Wiggy, started kissing on the lips. And we looked up and we were stood under this banner that said Gays Against the Nazis. And we just marched in front of it. That's what it was. And it was just incredible. And I came away from there with the understanding that my generation would define themselves in opposition to discrimination of all kinds, not just racism, but those gay guys being there made me realise it wasn't just about racism. The fascists we were marching against were trying to stamp out. It was the gays, women's rights as well. And so that realisation came from the audience, came from being in an audience of 80,000 kids just like me, singing in support of that song. And that was my first, as I say, that's my first ever experience of meeting out gay men. And it changed my perspective, not just of the event that I was at, but also of my politics. So I speak from experience when I say the power is in the audience rather than just merely what comes from the stage. It's really, really crucial that I understand that as an artist, and the audience understand too, because it's their power, and they take it away with them, and hopefully they can find that solidarity again and do something positive with it.
A couple questions about the folk tradition.
Yeah, of course.
So when you started playing solo, you were playing an electric guitar, which you still do on stage.
Yep.
I have worked at a few quote unquote purist folk radio stations where you couldn't find Billy Bragg on the playlist. And if you did, it was considered like edgy. So it was kind of like folk radio went through a weird phase where it like wasn't offensive and it wasn't political.
No.
What have been your thoughts on like the evolution of electric guitar, politics, and folk music, like especially particularly folk radio and your place within the folk community? 2
words: Woody Guthrie. How you can have a folk radio station that doesn't play, edgy stuff, when at the top of our cultural pyramid in the folk tradition is Woody, Leadbelly, those guys, old Pete Seeger, who put it on the line, who walk the walk and talk the talk. That's more to do with radio than it is to do with folk music, that attitude, I think, because folk has always had that element in it, as long as I know. I mean, I had listened to some folk music when I was listening to my singer-songwriter stuff. I'd listened to some traditional English folk music. But, when punk happened in 1977, that all went out the window and I was a punk rocker. During the miners' strike, one of the first times, because I was solo, I was able to go up and play in the coalfields, literally get on a train and go up there and do gigs. Because a lot of us, we did gigs in the major cities to raise money for support groups, but some of us actually going up there. There was an old guy singing, an ex-miner called Jock Purden. He was opening for me. He sat on the stage and sang with his hand over his ear a cappella, and his songs were more radical than mine. They were songs from the tradition. And in the dressing room after, I said to him, well, Jock, I don't know where I'm going to follow that, with my punk rock up from London songs. I feel like I'm totally out of the... He said to me, son, it doesn't really matter what you sing. The fact that you've come here to perform in solidarity with these people, you're part of the tradition now. You're part of it. You can go out there and sing whatever you like. The fact that you've stood in solidarity, that's your music is part of that. And it was such a generous thing of him to say, and such a positive thing. And I went out there and I eventually wrote a song called Between the Wars, which is kind of in the folk idiom, and it got into the charts in the UK, and in many ways defined me for a lot of people who I am. So, you know, to me, folk has always had that political side to it. And I've, you know, when I have played at folk festivals, I've always found the audience to be really supportive of that kind of stuff. I mean, look at the boat here, you know, how many people here have come into my shows, you know, responding really positive to some difficult issues that I touch on, you know. And so I think the Americana audience, the folk audience, they are coming to listen, they're coming to learn, and they're in that sense are more broad-minded than perhaps your radio station friends trusted them with being, really.
I'm sitting with that. Audiences are always ready for something more than radio is ready to give them.
The gatekeepers of radio are like, well, we don't want to alienate our
If you're gonna do that kind of thing, you're gonna have some pretty anodyne festivals.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you want people that, you know, it's a hootenanny. Come on, it's dangerous. You know, Pete Seeger went up before the House Un-American Activities Committee just for playing folk music. You know, just for singing Goodnight Irene. So, you know, we live in the awe of that tradition. We have to testify in that tradition, you know. And I've been hugely privileged to be to work with the Woody Guthrie family and the archive on the Mermaid Avenue records, and that's, you know, given me another perspective on how music works and how you bring people together and how you be part of the tradition but not of it, if you know what I mean. You know, I am in the UK, I am part of it, but I don't come from the pure end of it. You know, when they gave me the Folk Award, they gave me a Folk Award one year, the BBC Folk Awards, and there were some stirrings, and they had to get Martin Carthy to give it to me because he's the
he's in charge.
Indeed, he came out and give it to me, and which was, I just thought was brilliant. And so there is that conservatism around, but even if it's a minority audience, you still find an audience that will sustain you artistically if you do what you do. I mean, you know, there's, you know, if you try and cover all the bases, you're eventually going to do the splits. Instead, it's best to, you know, focus what you're good at and be true to yourself, and hopefully you'll have that moment where the stars align and you find your audience.
Okay, in 2016, you and Joe Henry made an album of folk songs inspired by the legacy of the American railroad system. I struggle with double R's. The legacy of the American railroad tradition. Shine a Light, which was field recordings from the Great American Railroad. So you recorded this whole collection riding a train from Chicago to LA.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Sure.
Getting inside the old songs and how being on a train, you know, ground level on this landscape helped you connect with the American folk tradition.
Sure. At the time, I was writing a book about skiffle, which is the sort of 1950s guitar craze that hit the UK. Peaked in 1957 when John Lennon, Paul McCartney and George Harrison formed the Quarrymen in Liverpool to play Leadbelly and Woody Guthrie songs. And in the context of writing this book, I realised that so many of those songs were train songs. And I hit upon the idea of maybe, you know, trying to record an album of those songs. And I discovered that outside of the northeast corner, there's very little passenger traffic on American rail. It's almost all freight, and a lot as well. Your country puts more freight on trains than almost any other industrial country. So when a train goes from, it's only one train a day, the Texas Eagle, goes from Chicago to San Antonio, then you get onto the California Zephyr, which comes sideways across from New Orleans. You have to change trains there. But when that train goes down that line, it's the only passenger train on that line all day. all day. And there's not many people on it. You know, there's people who love trains, there's English tourists, and there's people who don't want to show their ID at airports.
Yeah.
They're on the trains. And old geezers who used to be on the railroad when they were younger are on the trains as well. So they're interesting people. But when it gets to a city or a big town where there's several platforms, the train will stop for maybe half an hour, 40 minutes to let the freight trains come through. It will go into a side platform and they'll just sit there and they encourage you to get off and have a walk around and buy some, you know, whatever in the shop. You also have time to find a space that is acoustically conducive and record a live song. And that's kind of what we did. Some of them we recorded on the train, but most of them we recorded them on platforms while the trains were idling, waiting to get the first all aboard, the second all aboard, and then what we call the last all aboard, and make sure we get back on the train again.
Woody Guthrie, you were talking about him earlier. He's a constant presence in your life. He's been an inspiration to you for a socially conscious folk tradition. And you were the first musician to be allowed into his archives for the Mermaid Avenue albums. He seems like he's just like always sitting on your shoulder. What does your relationship with Woody Guthrie look like, and how has it changed over the years?
Well, it kind of, my initial relationship with was like most people of my generation, through Bob Dylan. I knew who he was, I knew why he was important, but I didn't really know a whole lot about him. I knew, you know, a dozen of his songs, because if you listen to singer-songwriters from the 70s and 60s, you just learn them through osmosis. They're all played there, you know, they're always there. But when Nora Guthrie approached me and I know when it was, because it was Woody Guthrie's 80th birthday party in Central Park, so that would have been 1992, and she told me she had these lyrics. My initial feeling was, in this Bob Dylan's job, why, you know, it's not really my job to do this, because I'm kind of like a foreigner. And she was like, well, so she started sending me photocopies of the manuscripts, and when I realized that they were complete songs, and they were really good complete songs, I said, okay, well, listen, next time I'm in New York, I'll come and have a look and see if I can work out something. And so I went to New York, and Nora really just opened the archive for me, but also told me that what she needed someone to do was to challenge the perception of who Woody Guthrie was, because she felt that he'd become captured by academics by the end of the 90s, and she was a bit concerned about that something was lost, and that the voice in the archive, there are over 3,000 complete lyrics in the archive that Woody wrote, songs about, from all sorts of different subjects, all sorts of incredible subjects. You know, it's like everybody on this boat could make an EP, and it, you know, really seriously. And so understanding that, and that, you know, knowing that if I made a record and it was dreadful, I haven't used up the last bits of it. And she encouraging me to choose songs that, you know, songs like Ingrid Bergman, where he talks about making love to the Swedish film star on the slopes of an Italian volcano, or My Flying Saucer, where he wants to go out and ride around the universe in a flying saucer, or, you know, songs about Hans Eisler, who was a German communist emigre who went back to East Germany and wrote the East German national anthem. I mean, you know, there's such weird stuff in the archive. Loads of Hanukkah songs. His wife's mother was a Yiddish poet, and she used to send him cowboy songs that she'd written, and he would send her Hanukkah songs for her grandchildren to sing.
Oh my gosh, stop it.
Yeah. It's amazing, and they had this fabulous relationship, and they're all in there as well. The Klezmatics made an album actually of Woody Hanukkah songs for kids. The opportunity to collaborate with one of the great figures of American popular culture was just incredible as an idea. But after I'd written my first few songs, I played some at a gig in the UK and talked to people about it afterwards. And from what they were saying, they couldn't tell the difference between the Billy songs and the Woody songs. And I realized, and you can do this in there, I was choosing Billy Bragg songs. That's what I was doing. Oh. Yeah. So I said to Nora, listen, Nora, I'm going to have to get someone else in to do this as well, because it's like, you know, I'm not really going to do the job. And that's when I thought about Jeff Tweedy, who I knew from his days when he was in Uncle Tupelo. And I knew that he was as much a fan of music, that he would understand the opportunity that Nora was offering to collaborate with her father. Unique. I mean, you know, think of any other great artist who 90% of his material hasn't yet been seen or heard or experienced. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So I went to see Jeff, and he grasped it immediately. And he came in and picked songs that I overlooked, like California Stars, probably the most popular song on the album. I mean, you know, wasn't something that connected me, but it connected with Jeff, and he's done an incredible. I wouldn't be surprised in 20 years' time it's a state song. It wouldn't surprise me at all to find it's the state song of California. So that's why it was important that the Wilcos came in, not just because they're great musicians, but because it needed it needed at least two people, I think, to get two different perspectives on it. And the generosity of Nora, the license that she gave to us to not just take her father's songs and write them, but to run with them as well, to goof around with them like I was doing last night with the intro to Ingrid Bergman. You know, she loves that. She loves it when we do that. And I think that she's, you know, really it's her record. It should really say Nora Guthrie presents Mermaid Avenue, featuring Billy Bragg and Wilco. It's really because it's her genius, her vision, her commitment to ensuring that her father's voice is heard in all its both glory and despair, because there are some lyrics in there. Woody suffered from Huntington's disease, which his health deteriorated dreadfully in the late 40s and the early 50s, and he was mostly hospitalized from about 1955 until his death in 1967. And one of the pages that Jeff and I came across is just written all over it, and it's all different ways, and it's just, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, and that's all it says, oh God, oh God. And me and Jeff were like, whoa, you know, this is heavy, isn't it? This is Woody going down. And Nora's like, don't be like that about it. It might be, oh God, it might be a vision. He might have seen something. It might be, you know, an ecstasy. We were like, yeah, it might have been. It might have been. We don't know.
Yeah.
But you have the opportunity then to take that and make it into something by you know, trying to tune into what Woody was saying and find a tune and piece of music that lifts up that idea and makes it accessible to people. Because that's all we're doing. Really, me and the Wilco guys, we just put a lovely frame around amazing art. That's what we offered, so people could access it, and that's what Nora's done since then. And she's encouraged other people to do that.
Nora's amazing. She's so good at bringing everyone together. Around an
really
ancient
good
idea.
Yeah, really good, and she fought really hard to get that done. You know, there was those lyrics were knocking around forever, and they were just really getting dusty in boxes, and you know, Harold Leventhal, Woody's manager, and Arlo, they didn't know what to do with them, and should Arlo do it, should someone else do it? Nora kicks ass. She made it happen, and she's been vindicated, and I'm so proud and honoured to have been part of that process.
Amazing results. Okay.
Yeah, I probably won't be here on this boat. I'd still be that English punk rocker. I wouldn't. No, seriously, I wouldn't be on the boat here. I wouldn't have made that step to Americana. I have her to thank for that.
I want to talk about the Roaring 40.
Yeah.
Which is your recent collection of so much of your catalog.
Oh yeah.
It's hefty. As a teenager, you were interested in genealogy, and you talked last night about looking into your and your partner's family trees. So I want you to tell us a little bit about how you see your musical genealogy being revealed in the Roaring 40s. Sorry, the Roaring 40, like, especially after releasing this retrospective and kind of commenting as you have on the fact that you're a part of an Americana scene in a particular time and place. Where do you see yourself as like a British artist in the genealogy of folk music?
My first real connection with English folk music came from hearing Scarborough Fair by Simon and Garfunkel.
Wow.
Now, at the same time as I heard Simon and Garfunkel sing Scarborough Fair, Martin Carthy was singing that in a folk club not 5 miles from my house, the General Havelock in Ilford.
Yeah.
Question is, why does it take two Jewish guys from Queens to record an English folk song for me to be able to connect with my tradition? It's because in folk music, what comes around goes around.
Yes.
You know, Woody Guthrie wrote an article once called Ear Music, which was about songs that he learned from his grandmother, who grew up in Appalachia and came down to live in Oklahoma. And two of the songs that he mentioned, Stew Ball, was one of them. The other one was Gypsy Davy, which is Gypsy Davy itself was the most collected folk song by Child. When Child came over and collected the Child ballads, the Gypsy Davy was the most, or derivatives from it, you know, Seven Yellow Gypsies, Raggle Taggle Gypsies, all those songs. That was the most common song. Now, Woody learned that orally from his grandmother in the oral tradition. That song was being sold on a broadsheet in my country during the 1700s. Stewball, a song that Leadbelly learned when he was working in the field. Stewball was the most common field song that the Lomaxes found when they recorded African-American field workers. Leadbelly learned that song. That song was about an event that happened in Ireland in the 1760s. And, you know, Lonnie Donegan, when he was being the king of skiffle, he recorded Stewball and he recorded Gypsy Davy. Now, who do those songs belong to?
Yeah.
You know, whose tradition is that? Lonnie Donegan wouldn't have recorded those songs unless Leadbelly and Woody first recorded them. And yet, you know, I mean, Donegan's mother was Irish. He had half a shout for Stewball, you know, because that's where it came from. It came from Ireland. So I think in the tradition, what goes around comes around, and you're being part of it. You have a right to draw down what parts of it that connect with you, which is for me, recognizing that aspect of it during the miners' strike and reconnecting with folk music was really important to me. So on one hand, I had the whole punk beginning, the one man, you know, Clash, first album, 17 minutes long, bit of boom, bit of bam. Then the miners' strike happened, and I had a hit with Between the Wars, which was really a folk song, you know. The first time I went to a folk festival, I went to play at a folk festival. The guy was taking me into the tent to show me where I was playing, and there were a band on stage playing Between the Wars with a hurdy-gurdy. Like, he said, "How do you feel about this?" I said, "I feel at home, mate. I don't feel this is not a problem for me. I'm totally down with this, you know." And then the next catalyst really was Mermaid Avenue, and that brought me into the Americana aspect of it. But I think it was really important for the project that Nora was envisaging, that she found someone who didn't grow up with Woody Guthrie, who wasn't intimidated by being in the room with him. You know, I saw Woody as a figure against the backdrop of American folk and pop culture. You know, I saw the Dust Bowl Traveller, I saw Dylan's influence, you know, I saw the 70s singer-songwriters and Woody connecting those. But he wasn't someone I'd grown up to revere. He was someone I admired as a songwriter. So I think my distance is the reason why it wasn't Bob Dylan who did this job. It wasn't Bruce Springsteen. It wasn't Neil Young. It wasn't an American artist. It needed someone who had a different perspective, a more distant perspective of Woody to cast the first stone and show it could be done. And once we'd done that, and people could see that you could do it and it would work and people respected it, then everybody else could join in. But it just needed someone to just throw that stone in the water first. And I was very privileged that Nora invited me to be that person. And so that gave me the access to Americana, I think recording with Joe Henry as well, the Tooth and Nail album with some great sidemen that he put together in Pasadena, recording at his house. That sort of brought me into that aspect as well. And, you know, it's folk Americana, it's like, you know, it's a really broad church, and I'm really pleased to be someone who's preaching out in the street to that church.
Speaking of Between the Wars, you've been adamant about not playing songs from way back in your catalog if it's only going to serve as a nostalgia trip. That set off a light bulb for me. I think especially in roots music, we have a complex relationship with nostalgia. What is it about nostalgia that rubs you the wrong way, like as a human being, Billy, and as an artist who has a political role to play?
Well, you know, we all like a little bit of nostalgia. You know, it's kind of like it leavens up our memories to think of those happy times. But I got the sense around the turn of the century that in my audience, when I played Between the Wars, they were getting nostalgic for Margaret Thatcher and the miners' strike, and when things were a little bit more black and white.
When you said we all enjoy a bit of nostalgia, I was like, I mean, not we all.
Yeah.
Some all.
Yeah, you're right. But I mean, it has its place. It does have its place in terms of, you know, in culture. But not nostalgia for Margaret Thatcher.
No.
You know, and for that. Whereas when I play There Is Power in a Union, which was written almost the same time as Between the Wars, I look in the audience when I'm singing it, and there's people there who weren't even born when I wrote the damn song, singing at the top of their voices, because in the last year they've been on a picket line. So there's no nostalgia in Power in a Union at all. We're not looking back to some golden age of the miners' strike. It's the 40th anniversary of the strike as well, right now. We're not looking back in nostalgia at that. We're talking about something that's really happening now. So Power in the Union still has that vitality, still has that energy. Whereas Between the Wars, it's a little bit like, those were the days. They was the days, but they weren't the good old days. They were tough, harsh times, not just for working class families and miners, but for women, for gays and lesbians, people of colour. So I don't have that. I suppose it is nostalgia. I look back and think we've come a long way. We've achieved an incredible amount, and we mustn't let that be lost now by people who believe that for whatever reason that their morality should be more important than our sense of who we are and how we live our lives.
I appreciate hearing you say that on the mic.
Thank you. I have nothing against Christians. Where I live, the Christians organise a food bank.
Sure.
What I have trouble with is when the word Christian is added with nationalism.
Yeah.
I have a worry about that, a deep, deep worry about that. So yeah, that's one of those things that I think we're all going to have to confront. We're going to have to be able, those of us of a progressive bent, but also our Christian brethren as well, are going to have to come forward and say, listen, I don't know which book you're getting these ideas out of, but it's not the book that I read.
The one I read said they shared everything amongst themselves,
tomorrow,
no one was above the other.
Tomorrow I'll be playing a song called Do Unto Others, which is to me, the golden rule, which is not just in Christianity, it's right across the board, and that to me, that's the 11th commandment, and we've lost sight of that a little bit, I think, these days.
Okay, I have a quick question about a word that you've used in an interview.
It wasn't tumescence, was it?
No.
Thank God.
No, we can't talk about that. You said that it was in reference to speaking up about trans rights at your live shows. You said that you want your audience to maintain their relevance, which I thought was interesting because usually in media we talk about whether or not an artist is relevant, not whether or not an audience is relevant. So I'm curious what you meant by that and how you see relevance as something that can be cultivated in musical communities.
Yeah. Well, I think when you get to a certain age, it all becomes a bit confusing, particularly if there's a blizzard of new technology coming in and you're trying to keep up with it, I've been blessed on this trip that my Twitter feed and my Facebook aren't working completely. I'm so happy about that. That when I went ashore in Aruba and I spent 2 hours in a coffee shop online, I didn't go to the F word and I didn't go to the T word, or as some people call it, the X word these days.
Wait, you're on Twitter? Do you follow dripped out trade unionists?
No, I don't.
We need to look at some merch together, Billy.
I don't follow very many people, I'll be honest with you. But I think that that sense that this is for my audience. You've got to remember this is a Billy Bragg audience. There is a sentiment in there that what we're doing has an edge to it. That it's not just about entertainment, although it is about entertainment. Of course, that's how we get people in. It is about entertainment, but it's also about inspiring people and taking action. As you get older, you can drift off of that. You can look back and think, well, I did my bit in the day. I've done my bit now. And now I'll just be sitting in my armchair and just, There are some things you can't run up the stairs anymore. You can't stand up for 2 hours at a gig anymore. There's a lot of things you can't do. But there's no reason why you can't still engage. So I'm trying to encourage and some of them are still active. Some of them are still active. But I'm trying to encourage those who feel the issue of trans rights is a little too hard. The need to balance women's rights with the rights of the transgender community, the need to use pronouns, the need to make adjustments that they keep forgetting to do and they feel bad about it, not because they're prejudiced, but they just can't remember to do it. Those kind of things are all come a bit hard. So I'm just trying to. That's why I specifically talk about geezers my age. Sitting there in their Clash t-shirts. I'm like, come on, bruv, we need to step up here. If Joe was still around, he'd be telling us this. That if Woody was around, we'd be getting this from them. So, relevant. And people, sometimes when I'm on Twitter and arguing with, or I've made a statement of solidarity with the trans and non-binary community, and some critics accuse me of trying to be relevant. I'm like, you're damn right I am.
Of course.
You're damn right I'm trying to be relevant. I'm going to stay in this fight because I know that it's not just about what the trans community are trying to live their lives in a normal way. It's also about who stands against them. You know, the deputy chair of the Conservative Party in my country, we have an election coming in the next year, said that someone pointed out they didn't have any policies, what the election going to be about, and they said they're going to be about trans rights and culture wars. And that to me is like a green light to get up and become active and speak up in support as a cis person, to speak up in support, because the trans community keeps saying we need cis allies, and anybody who has experience of supporting gays and lesbians in the 80s, 70s and 80s already has a roadmap in their head of this fight, because it's the same issues over and over again. It's bathrooms, it's kids, it's, you know, we can't talk about gays and lesbians at school, you know, what's going to happen to my daughter if she shares a change room with Martina Navratilova.
And it's about excluding trans people from public life in the same way that gays were
back in the closet.
Back in the closet. Yeah, back in the closet. And like, you know, we were talking about this question earlier in the room, and it's frustrating to me because there is that question of how do we advocate for women and not erase women? And most women will tell you that, like, in our life experience, trans people and other queer people, non-binary folks are the first to support us. They're like, we are all women, you know what I mean? Like,
of course.
We all share interests, and so it's not like our interests are competing. No. And so I appreciate hearing you say that as well.
And the threat to trans women and girls and women comes from the same place, and that is male violence. The place it's always come from, the place that's still to this day, you know, more women are killed by their partners than are, you know, more women suffer from domestic violence than you know, anything that the trans community has ever done. And you know, we need to focus on that. That's where the real problem in our society lies. You know,
that's the real reason they're coming for abortion, like we were talking about earlier. Like, it's not actually about the sanctity of a fetus. It's about making sure that people with uteruses can't leave their partners as they choose.
And the same with trying to ban contraception.
100%.
Yep. It is, and it's genuinely shocking in this day and age that there should be people out there who are trying to do that. It's I don't know. It's like you know, I've felt for a long time that one of the problems that we face politically is a failure of accountability, and as part of that idea, it seems to me that acting with impunity is an absolute key aspect of machismo. In fact, it's the ultimate aspect.
You need to make
machismo.
sure you're never going to face a consequence.
You push the consequences aside in front of everybody and say nobody can touch me. And that, in a political figure, is incredibly dangerous, whether your name's Mussolini or Johnson or Trump. And that's the problem we need to be looking at. And it comes back down to the politics of socialism, because socialism is fundamentally about accountability as well as being about empathy and compassion. It's also about how we hold people to account in the workplace, how we hold people to account, the corporations to account, how we hold absolute power to account. And I think those figures who seek to act with impunity, even when they're female, are still expressing a machismo aspect to it.
Oh my gosh, women can be agents of the patriarchy in the most insidious ways.
We were just talking about that.
We were talking about, you know, well, we'll say it off. We'll talk to you about it off.
But
off the mic.
That's 100% true. I mean, you know, there are female politicians in my country whose spiteful statements against the people who are crossing the channel in boats it's utter machismo. I'm gonna, you know, one of them said they dreamed of headlines on the front of the Daily Telegraph about flights they want to send them to Rwanda, and she said she dreams of these. I mean, it just shows you it's more about the bloody headlines than it is actually about the considerations for people who are seeking asylum in my country.
And at the end of the day, it's about a return to the colonial dark other. Like, they don't pick Rwanda by accident, but that's a topic for another podcast.
You know, that's a real big issue in my country. You know, the empire is to British cultural history as slavery is to the Americans. It's one of those things we just, it is exploitation. 100% about exploitation. Again, something which socialism was set up to fight against.
Billy,
Perfect distillation of what we're up against.
Would you like to join our podcast as the third host?
Yeah, that would be great.
Let's
Well,
go.
hey, if we talk more about soccer, maybe we could fit me in.
Okay.
I don't know
Never mind.
If we cover that.
Well, listen, just because we've contained multitudes, I've learned a lot from this conversation. It's been wonderful to have
Thank you.
Before we let you go, we need to do something very silly. It is called the lightning round.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
You Americans love these, don't you?
We sure do.
I always,
We love a silly little game.
yeah, hey, it's cool.
All right. What is the best Lonnie Donegan song?
Oh, I think it's his version of Frankie and Johnny. He really lets rip. John Peel was a great DJ in my country who first played my records. He said that was the greatest performance from the 1950s.
I'm impressed
yeah.
that you were able to pull that out. Yeah.
What is your favorite English treat?
My favourite English treat is something called marmite. If you've ever had that,
No.
It's yeast extract. It's dark and looks like.
Do you eat it out of a can?
I know what it is. I just
Or a
haven't
jar.
had it, and I
Yeah,
shan't.
it's incredibly. No,
And that's
you
for
shan't.
Ireland.
You shan't because Americans react to it in the same way that English people react to root beer, which is a kind of a WTF kind of experience, where it's how could you actually even drink this stuff? And Marmite has the same effect. Marmite, in my country, you can be a Marmite. In fact, I am a Marmite artist, I can't even say it. In my country, I'm considered a Marmite artist because Marmite is so contentious that people either love it or hate it.
Wow.
No one's just so about it. So if you're a Marmite artist, people either really love you or they really hate you. And that's my experience. There's never
the
anyone
new
who's just
identity
like,
politics.
Oh, yeah. It's either people are absolutely gung-ho for me or they like killing me on
That's so
Twitter.
funny.
It is funny, but a Marmite artist is a thing, yeah.
What is your favorite way to travel?
Actually, I prefer to drive when we're on tour. I'm not a good flyer. I'm not a happy flyer. I'm quite an apprehensive flyer. So yeah, we tend to tour in the van, sit in the van, and of course now you know there's so many things you could do in the van now with on your iPad. But I take a nice book and I do fly. We do have to fly sometimes because the distances are just too daft. But I generally prefer to drive.
What's your favorite snack here on the Cayamo cruise?
My favourite snack on the Cayamo cruise.
Answer
Now-
quickly. It's a lightning round.
Okay, yeah.
Don't think too hard.
It's a dry mango.
Very good.
It's on my rider, and I take the bags back to my room, and
Hell yeah.
yeah.
All right. What is your favorite method of voting?
My favourite method of voting is, in terms of, you mean electoral voting or actually casting the vote?
Casting.
In my country, you have a piece of paper and a pencil and you put a cross next to a box. I think that works really well.
You mean in-person voting?
Yeah, in person, 100%, yeah. Although I understand why people sometimes have to mail in. If we had election now, I'd have to mail in. But yeah, I prefer in-person voting, yeah. And with paper. So
And
you
a
can
true
count it.
leftist would have also added ranked choice to more
well, I was
properly
gonna
reflect
say-
the will of the people, but that's fine. We're all growing in
I
our
think you-
education.
that's why I asked. I would actually go for a single transferable vote.
Okay, great.
STV, your audience can look up how that works. I won't bother to explain it to you, but yes, a proportional type of vote will be great, not just in my country, but in your country as well. It would break down a lot of the partisanship, I think, because everyone would feel they were represented.
Yeah, and it would take away some of the gamesmanship we're dealing with now. We can talk about polling and data at a later time.
We have a lot to talk about in this
We
other
do.
podcast we're doing.
I
It's
know.
really, it's going to have to be about a different subject, I think.
What is your favorite children's song?
My favourite children's song is, bear with me a second, it's not really a children's song, it's Jabberwocky. I don't know if you know the poem from
Yes.
Alice in Wonderland, yeah.
'Twas brillig
And the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe, all mimsy with the borogoves
and the mome rat
out gabe. Yeah, I sing
So
it.
great.
I sing it to
Cool
my
duet.
grandkids. Yeah, it was cool. Yeah,
What
I
is
did. I can sing it a la Johnny Cash.
No way.
Oh yeah. I was goofing around in the sound check for the drum thing this afternoon and playing. You can play. You can play that song too. You can play lots of different ways. Jabberwocky.
What is one product you cannot live without?
I think we've already covered this, haven't we? Marmite.
Okay.
I take it with me everywhere. Yeah, it's one thing that makes everything tasty.
Okay, finally, what is your ideal vacation that's not the Cayamo cruise?
My ideal vacation that's not the Cayamo cruise would be probably a walking holiday with lots of pubs in it and places to sit and read in the corner. and a bit of mini golf.
What's that really long hike in England? It's like 100 miles long.
Well, there's a few of them. There's the South Coast Path that goes all the way down around Dorset, Devon, and Cornwall, around the coast of those, and Somerset.
That's a good one.
Yeah, there's.
Let's go.
Yeah,
I'd love to go.
Yeah.
yeah.
All
The
right.
coastal
I'll
path's
be there
really
April.
nice.
Let's go.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's beautiful. If you can put up with the weather.
Excellent. This has been great. Thank you for talking to us.
It's been a
Thank you
pleasure.
so much for coming
We've
on the
covered so
pod.
much ground. It's been really good. It's been really, really good. I hope you're able to broadcast it all. We didn't infringe any.
No, not at all.
Oh no, we say whatever we
We
want.
say what we want.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
We're in charge of our own destiny.
Amen to that.
This episode of Basic Folk was produced by CJ Nungesser. Alex Stanton composes our music. Basic Folk is on the Bluegrass Situation Podcast Network. Find all of our episodes there. You can check us out on the SiriusXM app by searching for Basic Folk. Find us on Folk Alley's mobile app or at folkalley.com, basicfolk.com, or wherever you get podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, we recommend sharing it with a friend. Maybe that one friend that you had in college who was a folk DJ on the college radio station with you, and she was also super into social justice, including organizing unions for janitors and checkout counters, and you maybe have lost touch with her in the last few years. This is a great way to reconnect with her because she was awesome. I think her name was Mandy. Share this episode with Mandy, your social justice union organizing friend. And thanks for listening all the way to the end. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.